Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And joining us a little bit early, and I'm glad you're here a little bit early. That way I don't have to do a break about something completely different and then switch back over. David King from Campbell County Emergency Services. And I didn't know this, but you're an old radio guy. Well, no, you're not that old, but
yes, I am old.
Well, you said you did what, 27 years in radio?
Yeah.
I
started out in Torrington when I was in high school. Worked in Lincoln, Nebraska. Worked in Scottsbluff, Laramie, and then I came to Gillette.
Wow. Yeah, so I feel completely inadequate now. It's not often that I get a guest in here that knows more about radio than I'll ever know. And you've probably forgotten more than I'll ever know. But I want to thank you for joining us this morning. And, of course, you're here to talk about the strange weather over the weekend and maybe some of the questions people might have about the response that at least the media around here had. So I guess, first off, give us a little bit of I'll be honest, I sleep. I sleep as soon as I get home from the show, so I slept through Friday nights anyway.
I'll be real honest. I was up till 1 o'clock this morning watching the weather moving through because we had severe thunderstorm warnings that we weren't sure if they were coming through Gillette or if they were going to hit Wright. Actually, they went between Gillette and Wright, and then they went right across the fire that's out on the Laver Road that we got crews on. So.
Well, I was up late. Well, I mean, I was up all night because I slept until 8 o'clock last night. The morning show host schedule. And I actually got the update on my phone. I mean, I have the smartphone that has the automatic update. Well, first, give us a little bit of an idea of what you do with the county. I guess that's where we should start for those that don't know.
I'm the Campbell County Emergency Management Coordinator. That is confused a little bit in Wyoming because of the advent of Homeland Security. It's one and the same under the statute. In Campbell County, we kept emergency management as the title. But they don't give me helicopters and they don't give me guns and that sort of stuff. My job is a coordination job. I keep telling everybody I don't manage nothing. I'm a coordinator. My job is to act as a liaison, if you will, and a training, resource, education, and all that between the public and our emergency services. And as one of those roles, I am the point of contact with the National Weather Service. There's some statutory stuff that comes into play with the emergency alert system, with weather service and spotters and some of this sort of stuff that is part of mine. But also in the statutes in Wyoming, public alerting services for civil defense. Clear back to the old civil defense days.
Oh, yeah.
But that is assigned to emergency management. So I'm responsible for our warning systems is one of my charges. So in that liaison with the Weather Service, that alerting responsibility and so forth really is the key of what you're looking at here today.
So you basically you're responsible for alerting for anything from weather to nuclear war to alien invasions.
Part of it and the whole focus, and I'm not a red lights and siren person technically, although I do wind up, I'm a volunteer firefighter, so sometimes it's which hat am I wearing. I'm also on the hazmat team, which comes into play when we talk about the tornado or the funnel cloud, I should say, the other day. But what comes in there is that I'm part of the recovery and restoration of the economy to get our economy back together. So once it's happened, then that's where my role comes in, unless we're doing the warning, which is also part of the response phase of the initial part of the event.
Right, and that would be where someone with a communications background would come in handy, getting the word out, and you kind of know everybody around. So,
well, I don't know everybody, but believe me, there's a lot of new faces in Campbell County since I was on the air, just like you. You didn't have any idea I'd ever done it. And there's people that I've been doing this job now for 17 years. So I've been out of radio for a whole generation at least. And there's a lot of people who have no idea that I ever did radio. In radio years, and you actually worked on this station, didn't you? Right. I actually was the station manager for KIML when I left. That is, wow. But that was really under Maple, Roy Maple and Ray Maple and previous ownership.
Yeah, the old studios north side of town.
Right. I can remember when we had weather event in the summer with flooding and snow melt and everything, and the old radio station had water all the way around the buildings.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that place floods fairly easy because it's kind of down a little bit.
Actually, that was the only time it ever has.
Really?
But, yeah.
But I guess around here we don't really get a lot of torrential rains. Although,
we have recently. That's the thing. What was yesterday? Sunday morning. My days have all blurred here in the last week.
I'd imagine so.
I went out yesterday morning to the northwest corner of Campbell County, clear up almost to the Powder River, which cuts across that last 7 miles of Campbell County's northwest corner. I was up there and was talking with a rancher up on the SA Road and the Broyles Road, and just ran into him as he's going down the road. He got 4.3 inches of rain in 1 hour on Saturday.
That's insane, and I tell everyone the same thing when the weather comes up. I moved out here from Delaware. I've only been here a few months, and I expected to move into a semi-arid climate, nice and dry, and I was looking forward to some dry weather for a change instead of living by the beach, and it's always that thick salt. Humidity.
That's all you're missing out there this morning is the salty tang of the air.
Yeah. It's nice, thick, fresh humidity out there today. It's done nothing but rain since I got here, and of course, I guess maybe the people that are in charge of water conservation and that kind of stuff, they're happy about it. But it did really surprise me.
I've never. I take that back. It's been 20 some years since I've seen it green this far into the year, so it's quite a bit different.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's also a bad side to it. And actually,
this same rancher, his total accumulation for the past week was 7 inches, including the 4.3. So he's had a couple of big rains also. The SA Road, which is a county road, a lot of people have no idea where it is. If you go to the Spotted Horse Bar up in northwest Campbell County, which is right alongside the highway there as you're going off toward Sheridan, you go a little bit beyond it, and the SA Road takes off from the highway to the northwest and sort of angles off up towards the Powder River there. And that SA Road goes down through 2 very large drainages, they're large areas down there. It flooded out, the SA Road did, over the road yesterday morning on both ends. So the only way into it was, as I just happened to luck into, coming in on the Broyles Road, which connects up in there. And I was also over on the Werner Road where we'd had water. It had been at least 5 foot over the road in the Werner Road area down in a canyon. There was a lot of rain and hail that moved through. Same thing, the SA Road and Bridge was up there. There were tree trunks that you and I could join hands and still not get our arms around those trunks that were laying in the middle of the county road. They had to bulldoze them off the road to open it up.
I guess that's what happens when an area that doesn't normally get a lot of rain gets 4 inches in an hour.
We have to remember our weather in this part of the country. We like our buttes and our the sharp walls on the creek banks and so forth, and we love the terrain. And so this is a work in progress. Those things weren't built by some guy with a backhoe out there. Mother Nature has carved this out through these kinds of torrential rains when things come in. That storm on Saturday night stalled out in the northwest corner of the county, and actually weather is sometimes influenced by terrain. It may have got hung up a little bit on the buttes and the ridges up there so that it didn't just keep on flowing through like it might have if it had been the flats of Kansas. And so it dropped most of its load in those drainages up there. We wound up with that torrential. Plus, they got hail like you can't believe, marble-sized, and there's places up there where there were piles down in the drainages and so forth of hail over 5 foot deep.
That is insane. I've never seen anything like that, and I've seen a few hailstorms in my day.
And that was comparable to what happened in Wright on Thursday night, because Wright had 2 foot of water on the flat around the houses in the subdivision south of Wright. They also wound up with those big drifts of hail. And the hail does not look, you look at it in the pictures, the hail does not look pristine and white. It is not. I mean, there are some pictures that were on the internet that were taken during it. But when the flooding and everything else occurred and it moved around, it got mixed in with the chopped up dirt and was turned, it just looks like chunks of dirt. But it's also with all the chopped up weeds that went in with the hail. The hail had chopped up. So it almost looks like blocks of hay. Then the next morning, the fog is coming, well, even that night, the fog is coming up off of the hail because of the temperature difference. And there was a semi went off the road. He crested the hill there, going south of right there by the water towers and all. He's southbound on 59. All of a sudden hits the fog bank, and then all of a sudden he's got all this ice on the road. He winds up down in the ditch. And I stopped and was talking with him, see if he needed help. He's putting chains on so he can get back up on the highway. He had an empty frac tank, is what it was, a frac water tank. So,
yeah, and that's actually something we have to remind everybody. When these storms happen, I mean, you got to be careful out on the road. If you have to go out on the road, just be careful. I mean, even this morning with the fog, I mean, there's a situation developing right now, and maybe we'll have some more on it later on. I don't want to mention anything in particular yet, but I mean, even just something as simple as fog can be really dangerous.
And remember, when you get where you're going, first of all, turn your headlights on so people can see you. But when you get there, turn your headlights off, because if you don't have the automatic shut off, you might be needing a jump later.
Well, you were kind of worried that was going to happen with your car.
My county vehicle sitting out here, the headlights are still on. I was like, aren't they going to go off? Aren't they going to go off?
Well, you never know. I've done it more than once. And actually, let's take a short break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about what happened over the weekend and maybe some of the way the emergency response.
How the sirens, all that kind of stuff.
How the sirens and the EAS system and all that stuff works. Stay tuned. News Talk 1270 KIML.
He likes turtles too. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking with David King. He's you're the director of the
I am Campbell County Emergency Management Coordinator.
I
coordinate. I don't direct. I don't manage.
Okay. I always get those titles mixed up. You coordinate.
You're not the only one. That's the thing. And you were talking on the weather there about the fog burning off. The fog is why we'll have severe weather later in the day.
Oh, really?
It is the moisture in the atmosphere. Then with the heating, that's where you start getting the buildup later in the day as that water vapor starts moving around in the atmosphere. So it's really nice. You look out, you see this foggy, cool morning and so forth. Well, that actually means we'll probably have a high chance of severe thunderstorms later in the day, somewhere in the region. I mean, last evening, they were building right over Buffalo and coming straight down the interstate. I mean, it's just like they hopped on the interstate and took a drive. And you're watching it on radar, and it's like, Gemini, they're lined up in a train back there. So, but this is the part right now. I'm watching for later in the day. That's part of the job. I start looking early in the day. What's the weather going to be? What's also later next week, or I guess we're now into the week. My weekend disappeared. So,
I know the feeling.
This week, Weather Service says we'll have a possible frontal passage, another system moving through tomorrow, and that's going to keep us in a cooler and moister flow. By the way, you know where most of the moisture we get out of our storms and so forth come from? Which coast?
Oh, I'd imagine it probably comes from the East Coast because
most of our weather, most of the moisture that falls in Wyoming and our part of the country comes out of the Gulf Coast.
Oh, the Gulf Coast because it circulates back up around.
It gets drawn up. Now the frontal passages and so forth that ring that out tends to come in from the Northwest, the Washington State, California. That's where the passage that wrings the moisture out, but actually the moisture gets into the upper atmosphere and is transported up here. So we have a lot of tornadoes, or not tornadoes, a lot of hurricanes. We get a wetter year. When there's a lot of hurricanes down in the Gulf of Mexico and down in that area, that pumps moisture into the atmosphere, creates the transport mechanism then that brings it up here where it comes out as rain, comes out as snow, all of that kind of stuff.
So once we do determine that there's going to be something coming through, a storm or potential tornadoes or something like that, what's the process like in your office once this is actually determined?
Craig Fugate, who is the director of FEMA now, used to be the director of Emergency Management, Homeland Security in Florida. He was testifying before Congress once about warning systems, and he actually nailed it pretty much on the head, and I've used that. As a matter of fact, it's on the front of our warning policy or our warning book at the sheriff's office in the EOC. And that's that the event must be detected. There are 5 different steps. I'll see if I can remember them all here. The event must be detected. A decision must be made to do something about the event. There must be a way to warn the public, and the public has to receive the warning, and the public has to know what to do, and the public has to actually do something. Those are the 5 steps. And he said, if we fail in any of those 5 steps, we might as well not have issued the warning in the first place. Now, there's dual responsibilities here. We have a responsibility to detect the event, to do a warning. The public has a responsibility to know what to do when they hear that warning, and they actually have to do something on it. We set off the tornado sirens on Friday. The first 2 phone calls I got, one was from my wife, the other was from my boss, wanting to know, why is the sirens going off? Well, we set the sirens off under policy. There's 2 times you'll hear those sirens. One of them is a tornado warning for the area that the sirens serve. The other is the monthly test, which is, I believe, the second Tuesday of each month in Gillette at 10:30 in the morning and Wright at 8:15 in the morning. We do the 8:15 in Wright because of the day sleepers, the coal miners and so forth, that try not to wake them up in the middle of what's their night. You wouldn't know anything about those day sleepers.
Well, from noon to 8 p.m., that's my sleeping period.
So, and you know how it is. You get interrupted for a test. I mean, the gentleman made a very strong argument down there in Wright to me that, I'd see it. I don't mind being woke up if it's for real. But just to set off a monthly test, you screw my whole day up. I don't get to sleep, and I run a shovel, and I could hurt somebody, and on and on.
Yeah. So you try to kind of minimize the people that are disturbed by it while still making sure that the thing works.
Now let's talk about the siren decision that was made the other day. What happened is we also had a severe thunderstorm warning that popped at the same time. And when the National Weather Service issues any of their warnings or watches, they also set them off over the emergency alert system, and they set them off over weather radio. Now, the emergency alert system is a secondary notification system in the whole system in terms of, I suppose you could buy a receiver and sit there and just monitor the emergency alert, but it's broadcast over radio stations such as here, AM and FM, and cable TV and broadcast TV. That's what the EAS system actually activates, if you will. So when the weather radio goes off with the alert, then it's a trickle-down thing that your receivers catch it, and then you can either rebroadcast that or you can broadcast it yourself, taking the information that comes out. That's how the EAS system works. The Weather Service never issued a tornado warning on the funnel or funnels. I've heard we had a couple of them. People from different vantage points see different parts of the storm and see different things. But they were funnels. They never touched down. It's not a tornado until it touches the ground by definition. So we had funnels hanging out. The sheriff's office dispatcher calls me. I'm on the way to Wright. I was talking about being on the hazmat team. We had a hazmat spill in Wright where diesel fuel, about 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel, had overflowed a tank with the flooding that had occurred on Thursday. So I'm on the way down there as part of that. The dispatchers are on the radio, and I'm hearing the radio traffic that they're getting phone calls about funnels. They check with deputies who are saying, yes, we see them. They wanted to know, do we set the sirens off? I've got my back to Gillette going south on 59, quite a ways out. I told them, if the officers feel there's a threat in the area that the sirens serve, set them off. Next thing, she's asking directions. We have a very difficult set off on the sirens. It's labeled 1, 2, 3. She's asking, okay, when I get to 2, which button do it? Because that's where we could actually set them off for a severe thunderstorm warning, which we don't, because like last night, that had gone off 3-4 times.
Yeah. We get, during the summertime especially, it would be going off every day at least.
There's one for hazmat to shelter in place. We've never used that one. But if we set that one off, it would tell you to stay inside and shelter in place, or the tornado warning, or the test. So she wanted to verify. It's a little scary when you're going to push a button and everybody in town is going to hear the end results of it. So it's a validation thing. She wanted to make sure. So, she's boom, boom, boom. Next thing I'm hearing radio traffic that people were hearing the sirens. So that's why that warning went out. It did not even go to the Weather Service. I called the Weather Service on my cell phone, told them what we had. and they were starting to watch the radar, but they never issued a tornado warning on it because there was no need at that point. It was not a long track or anything like that.
And they never touched the ground either.
No.
So and for a warning, there has to be
radar indicated or spotters on the ground have to physically see that rotation, and it can still be up in the air. It doesn't have to come down. Because at what point is it going to? I mean, everybody's watched the tornado chaser shows and so forth. At what point is that funnel going to decide, okay, this is the time I'm going to go all the way to the ground? Now, we have the advantage in our part of the country that we have large areas that there was a tornado apparently embedded in that storm up in the northwest part of the county on Saturday night, the one that had all the hail and everything up there on the S.A. Broyles and Werner Roads and all up in that area by Spotted Horse. I talked to a gentleman who physically saw it, and he says it was on the ground for a ways up there in the area of Chicken Creek Divide west of Recluse. Not at all surprised because that same storm system was generating a funnel or a tornado, actually. They did have a touchdown south of Broadus. And that was all part of a line of, so in other words, they were in the same family. They had the same mechanisms and so forth in those storms. So it's not at all surprising to hear that. I put him and the Weather Service together so that they can, and that's part of my job, is go do damage reports, let the Weather Service know what we've had, find witnesses that the Weather Service can interview so that they can update their records, because they get tornado or funnel reports or hail reports. That's all part of an investigation that goes on afterwards to determine exactly what they had. So that you have to ground truth some of this if possible.
Sure, and it's actually funny. Saturday, actually, I think it was late Friday night when I got out of bed. I slept through this whole thing, but I actually, and social media is actually pretty good for this kind of stuff, because I actually saw pictures of funnels.
Yep. I was very happy to see those, because people oftentimes, there really wasn't. I mean, my wife, she looked out where she was, it was blue skies. I talked to other people who looked out where they were as blue skies. So that's one of the things, remember, on the warnings, that all we're doing is telling you, hey, there's something to look for. When the sirens go off, I oftentimes say most people use that as grab the camera and let's run outside. And that's not exactly the reaction that you should be doing. But you do have a responsibility to validate whether the threat is one for you yourself. You may be in an area where the sirens are going off. Our sirens cover all the way from Sleepy Hollow to north of the airport. Out Prospector Village. That's a pretty broad area. But yeah, we've had tornadoes funnels visible northeast of Gillette and never set the sirens off because it's not in the area that the sirens serve, and it was moving eastbound. So we're not going to set them off if there's no threat to the area that the sirens serve. We don't set off Wright's sirens when the threat's in Gillette and vice versa. It's the same thing on a smaller scale in the Gillette area and all if it's not in the area served by the siren. So that is one of the warnings. Remember what I said about the 5 steps there. If you hear the warning, you have to know what to do, and you have to do it if necessary. The thing that comes in there is there's been a lot of research recently that shows that most people, when they hear the siren, and even though they know the siren going off means they should take shelter, they will still check with up to 4 other sources, most of them social media or calling someone, to validate the information before they decide what to do.
Yes, and that's actually a pretty good place to break. When we come back, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what people should do in this situation.
Okay.
So stay tuned. News Talk 1270 KIML.
For the latest on the show, follow Don on Facebook. Just search for Don Carpenter Radio. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270.
Right now, 682-1270.
I always forget which liners have the phone number in them. News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. And if you're just joining us, we're talking to David King, it's Campbell County Emergency Services Coordinator.
Emergency Management Coordinator. And this is probably the last break I'll actually get to say that. So I never did get it right. I'm not going to worry about it as long as the county knows what name to put on the paycheck.
That's the important thing. And I got the coordinator part right.
And, at least it didn't have 3 swear words at the beginning, That's one of those things. You live in Wyoming, sometimes people are rather blunt about their opinion, such as some of the phone calls I get when we set the sirens off and wake people up. So
and that's where we kind of left off in the last break. We were talking about what to do when the sirens go off, and we went through the 5 steps. Let's just kind of recap those again. It's
well, the first way the event must be detected. It must we have to have a way to warn the public. A decision has to be made to actually warn the public.
So those 3 are on your end.
They're on me. Then the public has to know what to do when they hear the warning, and they have to have some place to go. And unfortunately, both of those are on you because, for example, you may live right next to the courthouse. The courthouse has a really nice basement area that can be used for sheltering during business hours. Nobody comes down to open up the courthouse at 7 or at night or 2 a.m. or something like that, or on a weekend or a holiday. So during business hours, there's a place we can put people down into. There are no public shelters in Campbell County other than we have a place of refuge, if you will, in the basement of the library in Wright. Funny thing, when we had the storm come through on Thursday night, the library was closed during those hours. So that shelter wasn't open, even if there'd been a funnel coming. So you have to know what to do at any time of the day. And the other part of it is, okay, you're at work right now. Do you live, let's say you have a very nice shelter here at the radio station. Do you live here 24/7? Are you here all the time, every day of the week? So wherever you are, you need to have some sort of a sheltering plan because, hey, if you're in Walmart might make an overhead announcement and herd everybody into a back room if there's a direct threat to the building. You're at church. You're at the ball fields. Oh, by the way, you gave your kids to the ball team to go play, and you're not at the game, so now they're the responsibility of the coaches. Do the coaches know what to do with those kids if the siren goes off?
So there's a lot to this. And now, in the case of tornadoes, the main thing you would want is an underground basement. Is Wyoming one of those places where the homes actually have underground basements?
I have a basement in my house that is partially in the ground, partially exposed above because we're on a little bit of the hill. There's a lot of people, there is no basement in their house. There's whole subdivisions that got a high water table that nobody's put a basement in. Down here, not far from Godfather's, for example, there's a whole area down there that if they've got basements, they got sump pumps. It's one of those of everybody has a different situation on that, and you need to know what your best. You're talking about going low. The weakest point of that entire funnel is its point of contact with the ground. That's why they tell you if you're in a multi-story building, go to a lower floor, because the further up the shaft you go, the stronger the winds are. Now, in Campbell County, F2s are the strongest on record of any of the tornadoes ever measured. The Wright tornado was an F2 back in 2005, and it did all the damage down there, and we had our only federal disaster declaration it's ever been in Campbell County, and one of 7 in the state of Wyoming historically. 7. That's all we've ever had in Wyoming. Presidential disaster declaration.
So this isn't really a place known for really bad severe weather, as opposed to like Oklahoma or
the 2 people killed in the Wright tornado would think an F2 were significant. So it is a matter of life and death. You do need to seek shelter. The thing of it is most of the injuries and death that's caused in a tornado is because of windborne debris. If you're not in the vehicle that gets picked up and thrown, the crap flying around in the storm hitting you is your biggest danger on that. So that is a concern that you have to have as your you need to put as many walls as possible between you and that debris, because it's like I sit back with a shotgun and start taking shots at you. What do you want to do? You want to put something really solid between you and me so that I'm not able to hit you. Same thing with the storm. That's why we tell you go to an interior room that has no windows, because the windows break, then now you have glass flying around plus the debris. You want to go as low as possible because that's the lower. If you have to, you take shelter in a ditch. That's because you're trying to get low. You're trying to get out of that wind stream where the debris might hit you, where you could be picked up, carried off, that kind of thing. You go into a ditch, you want to be careful because most tornadoes also are accompanied by rain. So now
you might get washed away.
You have that other issue. The other part of it is if you dive into a culvert, it might have already been occupied by other living things that might object to your presence. Skunks are a possibility. Snakes are a possibility, So you make your choices. And the bad part of it is this is all, you're going from zero to, people heard the sirens the other day. They went from normal life to all of a sudden now the sirens are going off. What do I do? So So you're making that transition real quick. So it's something you need to have thought about in advance. Why does the fire department practice all the time? Why do cops go out to the shooting range all the time? You react under pressure the way that you trained. It's the same thing. If you have at least thought about where you would go to shelter in this building, when it happens, you've already got the start of a plan.
And any preparation at all is better than none. And I think a lot of people, I guess it kind of showed on Friday as well. I mean, a lot of people really didn't know what to do.
I had a little old lady that used to call. She's passed on now. She lived in apartments here in town, and she would call me after storms. So I was in my bathtub and I had my bicycle helmet on, and that was she had identified as that was a place she could go in her apartment. And obviously, if the building's destroyed, she would have been at risk. But she was doing what she could to improve her own personal situation because her mobility wouldn't have allowed her to go racing out the front door or down several stories.
Yeah.
So she had at least made a personal plan, and I always loved hearing from her because she always had a different story. And my nephew thinks I'm silly, and it was a lot of fun. But we need more people like her.
Yeah, and it might sound silly, but that one time when it actually makes a difference, it's in any preparation at all is good.
Now, the other thing that we do not do is we do not sound an all clear when it's over with, because people are in all different. I mean, I could sound an all clear for Gillette, and maybe you're in Rosette, and the storm's coming at you. Now, I said come out, and I shouldn't have. So that's one of those things that is a danger. Also, people have to make a judgment call on their own. The wind stops blowing, it's probably safe to come out. It's not like a hurricane where you're in the eye and the wind's going to come from a different direction. So that's another part of the whole warning system that people need to be aware of. And we do offer some advisory capabilities. You did that a little bit ago when you did the weather. We're starting. In the course of the day, things may happen. So that's the early morning advisories for people that as the day starts and so forth. And like I said, I was doing stuff last night until 1 o'clock this morning with the storms that we're going through. There are people that I send out text messages to, emails to, and anybody can sign up for it. If you go to the Campbell County government website, you can find emergency management, and right there on the first page, it's a link how to sign up to receive emails and text messages. And you could even, if we needed to, could send a voice automated telephone call. But the other system we have been using since the RV rally this year in town, or RV rallies, is called a Nixle system.
Yeah, and that actually posts right on Facebook as well.
That's right. And if you see the city of Gillette, there's a box I check whether it posts to the Facebook or not. And we work with the city on that, and it posts those advisories. You can follow that link. You can go to Nixle and create an account. Or quite frankly, if all you want are the text messages, you can send a text to 888-777. And all the message has to do is have your zip code in it if you are in Campbell County. And that you just signed up to receive them. You don't want to get them anymore? It's 888-777 is the number you text to. And you just text stop. But Nixle is nationwide, and there are other places. Charlie Messenheimer from Public Health, who backs me up as a deputy coordinator, was in Watertown, South Dakota earlier this year when they had a tornado. He's back there on vacation. He decided he put in the zip code for Watertown, and he started receiving Nixle notices.
The technology can really be a good thing. I mean, it does help get the word out. But again, in this case on Friday, with this tornado
none of
warning,
us were in position to send the notices, and it was such short fuse, we had no time to do it.
That, and it didn't come through the Nixle system because it wasn't from the National Weather Service.
We send the messages out on Nixle. We go in on the internet, have a code to put it in and send it out. But normally we send out what the Weather Service is sending. It's not an automatic flow through on that. You can also go to the Weather Service, sign up to receive warnings and advisories on it. I'll be real honest, one of the best notification tools in Campbell County that I recommend, if anybody ever asks me, is go get a weather radio. Because if I live out in a 40-acre subdivision or where we have large lots and so forth, you probably don't have a siren serving it. If you in the middle of the night have the radio turned off, last night at midnight or so is when they toned out the weather radio fired off for the storm that was going down towards between Gillette and Wright. And they sent out the weather advisory. My weather radio went off at home. At least I assume it did. I wasn't there. But it's one of those things it goes off. That's it's like having somebody page you when they issue a warning or alert. Look for one that is specific area message encoding, or SAME. That allows you to put in a code that it only goes off in central Campbell County, or only for northern Campbell County, or only for southern, so that when they are issuing them for the Black Hills, it's not going off at 2 a.m.
Right.
Unless you're in the Black Hills.
Yeah. And the way those work is it just picks up the signal over the air, and then if it's for your area, it lights up the radio and starts broadcasting.
Yes, and I really recommend those for anybody, even if you are close enough to hear sirens, because it wouldn't have worked on Friday, but you would have heard the severe thunderstorm warning, which should have told you that we have potential for bad weather.
Oh, yeah.
Severe thunderstorms. People need to understand. Severe thunderstorm has nothing to do with rain. A severe thunderstorm warning has to do with the size of the hail and the strength of the winds. Those are the two criteria, and if you have either or both, then it's a severe thunderstorm. A severe thunderstorm, it's 1-inch hail, which is the size of a U.S. quarter, or it is winds of 60 miles an hour or stronger. By the way, hurricane gusts are wind speeds start at 74 miles an hour. So when we have 67 mile an hour winds in Wyoming,
it's almost a hurricane. And I will say that those winds can be just as bad or worse than some of the tropical storms that do a lot of damage. I mean, I was right off the coast in Maryland when Sandy came through, and I think we might have had 75 mile an hour winds, maybe.
The difference there is sustained. It's not gusty.
It was all night. It was rough.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually almost out of time for this hour. Just a quick give the information out about how people can get a hold of you, and what the Facebook page and all that.
Easiest way to find me, if you're physically looking for me, I'm in the courthouse. My office is in with the commissioner's office. So first door on the left as you come in the lobby from Main Street. You can find me in the phone book, Campbell County Emergency Management. You can find me on the county website. There is emergency management page there, or area within the county website. If you're looking, that number, once again, is for the Nixle sign up. If you want to do it on your smartphone, 888-777. That's who you text it to, and then you just send them your zip code. And that gets you signed up for those alerts. Or you can go in on the Nixle.com, Nixle.com, and create yourself an account, and it'll allow you to do email or receive the emails, which are much longer.
Yeah, and those are all better ways to kind of keep informed than...
We don't use them as warnings on Nixle or City Watch, which is the notification. Those are advisories, because just like we saw Friday.
Right.
It could be, we don't have time to get out a warning. It's too quick fuse. Yeah,
and with the weather, it's constantly changing. So
that's the one thing about it is the weather will be different. Just wait a little bit.
Well, hopefully the rest of your day won't be quite as bad as it's been over the weekend. And we'll see.
I have to go back to work to rest up after the weekend. So.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go. David King, Campbell County Emergency Management Coordinator.
Yay!
I got it right the last time. News Talk 1270 KIML. We'll see you at the other side of the break.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.